Hey guys, welcome back to more AFK Arena. In today's video, I want to go through all the active codes in February. Now, the one at the top here on the list, that one is a brand new code that came out less than 24 hours ago from the time I upload this. So if you've been just paying attention to regular videos, I haven't mentioned this in another video yet, so that is a new code for you guys. Everything else here is all the ones that I found that are still active. Unfortunately, some of the great ones we got in January have already left us, so that does kind of suck if you are, just starting the game now, but, there are always more codes coming through the game. But these are the ones, we're going to go through all these codes. They'll be in the pinned comment and the description, and then we're going to go through the wish list and see what kind of a reroll we can do if you're looking at an alt account or you are in the new to the game. So let's go through it. First of all, let's just copy these codes. So like I said, this was the new one. Actually, wait, first of all, we got to log in. So for those new to it, website will be linked in the description in the pinned comment as well. We enter our user ID, which is just up here, as you can see next to my image. And that's 150245732. And then we need a verification code. We go to settings down the bottom here. We hit the verification code on the bottom right as well. And that one's going to be 998184, and I can log in there. And then there's a login successful, so it tells you the server and all that sort of stuff. Next, we can just go ahead and enter these codes. So we can go copy, we can go paste, and we go redeem. Successful. And now this area, the error that you'll see here is a frequency error. If you see that, just retry it in a couple seconds and then it should work. So otherwise it'll say that the code is expired, and that's when you know you're using an expired code. And unfortunately, time has passed too much. But like I said, unfortunately, we lost a bunch of the January codes, which kind of sucks. But some of these ones, like Brutus 22 came out when Awaken Brutus did, which was like a year ago-ish, I think. It's ages ago. No, Taylene was the first one. Brutus was the second, I think. Same with AFK, and that misev has been around since like the very start of the game as well. So there we go. That's what we've got. So what do we actually get from this? And then literally in your game, we can just jump over to the game screen now because we don't really need to see all of that stuff anymore. That is how we redeem the codes. But yeah, so from that, let's see what we end up with. You just go to your mail. What do we got? We got the 30 scrolls. We got the 10 scrolls. Another 5 scrolls, and we've got some diamonds. So not as great as previous months have been if you're trying to run a new account, but still not horrible. So let's just go through the other quick things we do when we do it. If you're running a new account, you can get like 1,000 diamonds, I think it was, from that. I'm not going to go ahead and watch that because it's forced watching. And then this one, we can collect another 1,000 here. So it sets us up not too horribly. And did I collect those? I did. Do we have anything else in the bag worthwhile? The other thing you can do is you can go into your portraits and collect all your portrait story gems. But yeah, I'm not too stressed on that. Now, there is one other thing that I wanted to go through as well, where you can get some gems. If we go over here and we go to settings and we go to the splash screens, you can also come here and you can get all these gems from all the different splash screens that have come through the game. And they're just free gems as well that you get along the way. So go ahead and pick them up if you want to do that as well, if you are re-rolling. Like I said, we're trying to keep this one narrowed down a little bit. So let's jump into the wish list. Now, this base wish list, as always, this is the base wish list that the game sets. And the first summon that you do when you clear the first chapter, if you're new, or you can skip through the first chapter if you've played through the game before, basically your first single summon is always going to be from that wish list. Even if I change this wish list, it's always going to be a hero from that wish list. Just keep that in mind. So your first summon is guaranteed. Your first single. So if I went and did like 3 10 pulls and then a single, that first single would be based off of this wish list. It's a bit frustrating, but it is what it is. So let's jump into the wish list and have a look at what I'd be putting on the wish list personally. Now, for light bearers, and this is for a new account, you evolve your wish list as you get further because some units are helpful in the early game and drop off later on. So for me, in this one, I feel like even though Palmer sucks in the early game, he does become a very vital unit. And light bearers outside of Rowan and Rosaline aren't the most important in my opinion. I would definitely put Scarlet in here as well because you definitely want to just gradually get your Scarlet copies because she will be a main bossing unit for you. In this final slot, you can sort of take your picks. Like some people would flex Rain, some people would flex a Strilda even, maybe even a Cecilia copy for bosses in the early game, Morrow for some extra CC. But what I like is, I actually like doing for an early game, is to chuck Sonya in there. She's decent in PvP later on as well. She's not great in the endgame campaign or anything like that, but I just really like putting her in there as an early game unit because she's very powerful in the early game. So that's what I would do there, and eventually she would get flexed out, but the other 4 would stay because they're good right throughout the game. Then we jump into Maulers. Now, Maulers is a bit of an interesting one. You can sort of take your pick. I really like a Nasta. She's okay in the early game, not broken, but she's really useful in a lot of places in the later game, so she's great to get copies of. Kren is another one that's a bit of a no-brainer. He's just a really solid unit later on. Not so great early on. Then we've got Chicken. You need to get him ascended to get his furniture, to do the grouping strategies, and those are like the 3 mandatory ones. You can put Brutus in there, but you do get a copy of Brutus for free as well from one of the campaign stages. He's really handy for his invulnerability, but then you can also like flex around a couple like carry units, like something like Antandra, if you want, who can be like a really solid early game carry. So if the RNG falls, that you just pull a bunch of Antandra copies, like then through the early chapters, she can help you. And Thesku is a very similar one to that. He's an amazing early game carry, but completely falls off in the later game. So those are 2 options you can have. Me personally, I really like Thesku, so he's one that I would leave on, and then I'd probably just throw the Brutus in there like that. You do have other tech options. Something like Salaki, absolutely horrible in the late game, but if you get 1 copy of him in the early game, he can be pretty decent if you don't pull any of like the wilder supports or anything like that. But in general, I feel like that's a pretty solid wish list. And then we jump into the Wilders. Now for me, Wilders is pretty set. Honestly, there's just too many good Wilders, and that's the problem. I wish I could take up slots from like the Maulers and put extra Wilders in them, but we can't, unfortunately. Astar's just amazing in the early game. The damage mitigation, if you get her signature item as well, she can deal really nice damage, plus having really good sustain, plus damage mitigation. All round great kit. Then you've got like things like Leica, who's fantastic to get a copy of. I feel like in the Wilders, there's a bunch of units that I would try and get 1 copy of. Leica, one of them. Tassie's great in the early game. Lawson's great for tech situations where you need to just, like link a couple enemies. You got Pippa, who's fantastic for the extra control. You got Raku, who you want to get copies of for the later game. He's not so great in the early game, but is good later. But in general, and also Navanthi, another great support for me. So that's those 3 would be my staple selection early on. Just a great tank and great support units. And then I'd probably put a Leica in there. And also a Pippa. And then once I got Leica or Pippa, I would swap them out for a Tassie. And then once I got the Tassie, I would swap it out for the Lawson. And then once I got the copy of Lawson, I would swap him out for Raku. And then my final wish list would probably look like something like this once I got all those single copies. But Raku, I'm not too stressed on early because, like I said, he doesn't get good until the late game. You got to put a fair bit of investment into him. So in general, at the very base, I'd be looking at something along the lines of that. Then we jump into the Graveborn. So this one, fairly kind of like the Wilders, you got a lot of really good units that you want to go for, and also some units that you want to swap in and out. So 1 Pharrell copy, fantastic. 1 Nara copy, fantastic. So you'd sort of like swap a position through those 2. Besides that, I really like getting 1 copy of Fane as well. His control can be really nice. And those are the main units that you want to get. Now, you can leave Grazul in here, or you can look at Thorin. I kind of like doing Grazul first. That's just me personally. You can also drop Grazul out because he's not needed in the early game and start off with a wish list looking something like this. And then once you get those copies of them, say you get a Nara, you can drop the Nara for a Fane. And then once you get the Fane, maybe you drop and then you look at Thorin or Grazul, whichever one you want to do. Thorin's for cheese, Grazul's for Ulna Grazul. And that's basically where you're looking at with this type of wish list. Damon, the best early game carry. He's fallen off in the end game, but just absolutely great early game carry. Odin, probably the best support in the early game, like the best support controller in the early game, just the grouping, the stunning, especially once he opens his eyes. Fantastic. And Silas, just one of the best healers as well. That the orbs in the early game are absolutely insane. And then he can just continues into late game because of the invincibility that he provides. But something like that is going to get you set off on a good direction. So that's our wish list. Every purple that we get is guaranteed to be from that wish list. However, this first one is not guaranteed to be on it. This is going to be something off that base wish list that the game provides. And Rosaline is in that base wish list, so we do get that. So not too bad on the Rosaline. Let's just roll through a few summons on this account and see what we end up with and see where we go. So let's do this. This is the first temple, which also has a guaranteed purple. A star, not too bad if you get a bunch of stars. Let's do another one. You can also do the Facebook share. I'm not going to do it because sometimes it bugs out the emulator. So I'm not going to do that. We can go again, see what we get. But like I said, it's not a massive amount of resources we get for new accounts right now. But hey, the game, if you grind the game out, within your first week, you can easily do 500 summons. There we go. This is actually a pretty decent start to an account already. We've got a Mishka and we've got a star. That's pretty solid. And we also have the Rosaline, who's a decent early game support as well. So let's go here, the last temple that we'd have. And that is going to be where we're at. Like I said, very few summons. I could do 9 singles, but I'm not going to bother. But yeah, very few summons compared to what we used to get. But honestly, off of that many summons, it's a pretty good start getting a Mishka and a star. I'd be pretty happy with that one personally. But if you do get an Awakened hero, pretty much a keeper. Unless it's Awakened Aziz, because he is handy, but he's not like carry. The rest of them are like really solid carry options. But anyway, guys, that is going to be it for this one. Thanks for watching. Hope you have an awesome day, and I look forward to seeing the next one. Cheers.